When I first started thinking about the story of Adam and Eve, I was like, Eve, meet me in the back because you playing. You hear me? She playing. One of them ones where when I make it to heaven, I was going to go see my family and I was going to go see Eve. And I wonder how many people in heaven was like, I need to talk to her. Because first of all, you got me messed up. The more I get into my Bible and the more I read about the story of Eve in chapter 2 and 3 of Genesis, the more I'm like, okay, sis, I can see how the devil tempted you. I can see how the serpent tempted you. And I can see how I've even fallen into that same trap. Talk about Genesis chapter 2 and 3. Now, I'm in my Good and Beautiful Study Bible, volume 2. You already know. I'm going to link volume 1 and volume 2 so that way y'all know. But yeah, let's talk about it. This study Bible referenced chapter 2 and 3 for today's reading. And every time I go into Genesis chapter 2 and 3, or just Genesis in general, stories that I think I remember, I get different things pointed out to me every single time, and it's crazy. So I'm going to talk to you about just a little rundown of the story and then some stuff that I got from it. So y'all, quick little okie doke. So we all know God worked for 6 days. He's just creating everything beautiful. And then he rested on the 7th day. And then he was like, listen, I need somebody to help me out with this yard, okay? Because I'm not cutting all these acres by myself. You know what I'm saying? So first he created Adam. Then he gave Adam some pets. Okay, he gave Adam some animals, a whole bunch of them, everything he wanted. He just gave him everything, so this is beautiful because Adam is just, he's the gardener and he's the veterinarian. Like Adam was just, he's that man. And God realizes, man, he ain't good alone. Understood? So he takes Adam, goes night night. He gives Adam some godly anesthesia, and then he creates a woman using one of Adam's ribs. Now, in my mind, Eve is cute, okay? It doesn't talk about what she looked like, but she got to be cute. She the first one. I just wondered if she had braids or bundles, like this all natural curl pattern. Her curl pattern had to eat. This is what I be thinking. Y'all get so distracted because I be wondering about the specifics. God, what did her curl pattern look like? You know what I'm saying? Tell me. Basically, she was in the Garden of Eden. So did she have cream of nature? I just want to know. Or did she create her own shea butter? These are things we need to understand. That's just in chapter 2. So this is when God creates everything. He creates her. He creates Adam. He creates these animals. Like he's created everything and made this beautiful. And of course, we're familiar with the fact that he tells them like, listen, you can eat whatever you want. We got the apples over there. We got some peaches over there. Make some apple peach cobbler. Do what you need to do. Chapter 2, verse 23, they basically get married. Adam says, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh, and she shall be called woman. And because she was taken out of man. So that was chapter 2, verse 23. And then chapter 24, therefore a man shall leave his mother and father and be joined with his wife, and they shall become one. So this is when they get married. What a beautiful wedding. Imagine being one of the birds watching the wedding. Like, I bet Eve ate. I bet she ate when she came down the aisle. This is important to know. Chapter 2, verse 25 confirms that, and they were both naked, but they were not ashamed. They had no shame. So they were in this garden, living life beautifully, not ashamed of nothing. Tatas out, butt out. They wasn't ashamed of nothing because they didn't know. All right, now we're on to chapter 3 where they start getting tempted. And the serpent is more cunning than any animal. He's smart. He's smart. And so because he's smart, he's going to use different tactics, right? But if you notice, if you continue reading chapter 3, you can see why Eve was tempted and how it applies directly to us today. Go back to chapter 2, verse 16. And the Lord commanded the man, saying, of every tree in the garden you may eat freely, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil you should not eat, for in this day you eat, you shall surely die. So we understand that the devil, the serpent, the snake, whatever you want to call it, has the understanding of God's word. He understands it. And one thing that he will do then, and he will do now, is he will use that word against you. So when the serpent approached Eve, the first thing he did was get into her head by questioning what she heard God say. So if you look at chapter 3, verse number 1, actually, it says, he went to Eve and he said, has God indeed said that you shall not eat of every tree in the garden? So he got her pondering, like, shoot, every tree. Let me think about that. Let me think. Eve's number 1 mistake is she has the conversation. She starts a conversation with the serpent. She starts going back and forth with him. She's like, you know what? Well, he said we couldn't eat from the fruit in the garden, but there's one in the middle of the garden that we can't touch or we're going to die. Notice that. Devil is going to use her lack of knowledge to his advantage, because then he goes forth into chapter 3, verse 4, and he says, the serpent said to the woman, you shouldn't, baby, you ain't going to die. You ain't going to die. You good. Here, hit this. Explains to her, if you do this, then you're going to know about God. Like, you're going to know from his understanding. You're going to know good and evil. Don't you want to know the difference between good and evil? Don't you? Now in verse 3, chapter 6, things that she was previously unable in her mind to touch, God says she was unable to eat, start looking desirable to her. They start looking amazing to her. She starts yearning and desiring for these things because, number one, she had a conversation with the devil, with the serpent, with the snake. Number two, she went off a memory on what God said. And then number three, she's being tempted, but what she's looking at starts to look good and desirable to her. Haven't we all been there? Fast forward, we all understand the story, and it led a lot of us, as we became newer in our Christianity and newer in our faith, to want to fight her, to want to take her outside of the heaven's gates and fight her. Because if you given birth to any child, you looked at Eve in the midst of that and said, you know what? Was it just me? Okay, I didn't think so. About it. Eve was just created. Eve was naive. Eve was lacking the understanding that we all know now as growing Christians and growing into our faith on how to handle situations when we're tempted. And let's talk about how to do that. So, number one is, you know the saying where it says, devil, get behind me? When that thought comes in your mind or you're tempted by the tempter, immediately, devil, get behind me. I'm not going to have no conversation with you, baby. You behind me. I'm not even going to entertain the thoughts that you give me. You behind me. I'm not going to go back and forth with you. You're behind me. I'm not going to do it. Times when God had to check me in that moment to not go back and forth with the tempter. And I'm going to tell you, just in terms of social media, you know, there's times where you may get these negative comments on your videos. You may get these negative comments on posts that you post, whatever. You don't have to go back and forth with nobody. You don't. It's a choice. Devil, get behind me. Devil, get behind me. I can't entertain it. I just can't do it. It's just, I can't do it. That's number one, going back and forth. And if you catch yourself, because we are human and we do make mistakes and we do things that we do impulsively. And yes, we're all working on that, but sometimes we slip. If you do find yourself going back and forth in a situation, catch yourself in that moment and be sure that you're referencing your word. Be sure to go back to the word. What does the word say about this situation? What does the word say? I don't want to go off of memory. Yes, I may be able to quote lines from The Wood, because I've watched The Wood a couple thousand times. Not gonna lie, probably not a couple thousand. I watched it a handful of times. But I need to make sure that I'm getting in my word and reading the same verses and meditating over those verses and spending time with God so that I understand his word, so that in times when I need to regurgitate it, I can do that. Eve teaches us a valuable lesson, and it's definitely something that we don't want to gloss over because it's a story that we've heard a million times. We do need to go back and meditate on that because it gives us a play-by-play of what not to do when we're tempted, and we all will be tempted. You may even be tempted today. So when you get tempted today, honey, stink a butt, what are you going to do? Devil, get behind me. Devil, get behind me. You don't have to go back and forth. It is a decision. And today, let's make the decision to not do that. Let's make the decision not to go back and forth with temptation. No, devil, get behind me. I'm not entertaining it today. I'm not going to do it. Well, that's my take on Genesis 2 and 3. What's yours? Comment it below, and I will see you guys next on the next Bible study. Bye.